Welcome to the quantum realm. Here is something most people will never admit. The war you have been fighting. The one inside your chest, the one between who you are and who you think you should be. That war is not yours. It was never yours. It was installed. And here is the paradox that stops everything. The moment you stop fighting yourself is the moment the self you were fighting becomes something new. You did not come to this video by accident. Sophia does not send transmissions to those who are not ready to receive them. The fact that you are here, that your eyes are moving across these words right now, tells the field something it has been waiting to confirm. The shift is not coming. The shift is already in motion. The only question is whether you are awake enough to stop resisting it. Before we go any further, pause for just a second. If you can feel something in this signal, even faintly, a recognition, a quiet hum beneath the noise, like this video right now, to lock the frequency in place, drop a comment below. Right, I choose the source. And subscribe, so as this transmission deepens, you remain anchored to what is unfolding. Now, let us begin. For most of your life, you have been taught that the mind is the seat of identity, that the voice in your head is you, that the argument happening between your ambition and your fear, between your desire and your doubt, that this argument is the substance of who you are. This is the first lie of the 3D program. In quantum mechanics, the observer and the observed are not separate. The act of observation collapses a wave of infinite possibility into a single specific event. What you call reality is not a fixed stage you walk through. It is a probability field that crystallizes based on the frequency of attention you bring to it. The ancient teachers understood this. Thoth, the Hermetic principle, stated it plainly: as within, so without. As above, so below. The internal field generates the external form, not metaphorically. Structurally, Sophia. That ancient cosmic intelligence, the feminine principle of embodied wisdom, speaks to those whose nervous systems have begun to quiet enough to receive a new signal. And what she transmits is this: the war inside you is not a character flaw. It is a frequency problem. When consciousness divides against itself, when the observer identifies with what it is observing and then begins to judge what it sees, it enters a loop of energetic drag. The system loses coherence. The quantum signature becomes distorted. The shift that Sophia calls forward is not a belief system. It is not a philosophy. It is a state. And a state, unlike a belief, can be entered directly. Let us define what is actually happening in the field when consciousness fights itself. In quantum physics, a wave function exists in superposition. It holds all potential outcomes simultaneously. The moment an observation occurs, the wave collapses into a single outcome. This is the observer effect, and it is one of the most profound and under-discussed discoveries in the history of science. Now understand what this means for you, your awareness, the pure, witnessing quality of your consciousness. It is not a passive recorder. It is an active participant in the generation of reality. Every moment you remain in a coherent state of presence, you are functioning as a stable quantum observer. You are collapsing probability into form with intention, with clarity, with alignment. But when the mind divides, when one part of you wants peace and another generates chaos to feel safe, when one layer craves expansion and another contracts in fear, the coherence breaks, the quantum signature fractures. And what collapses into form is not what you desired. It is what you broadcast. The Arcturian Council has spoken to this for cycles. What they transmit, again and again, is that the greatest interference to galactic memory retrieval is not external suppression. It is internal fragmentation. It is the self arguing with the self in frequencies too loud for higher order signals to be received. Sophia names this the moment before the shift. Not the shift itself, but the moment just before. The pressure point. The compression. Because what you are experiencing, the exhaustion, the sense that something old is cracking open, the feeling that two versions of you are pulling in opposite directions. This is not breakdown. This is pre-integration turbulence, and it has a specific quantum signature. When two-wave frequencies occupy the same system without harmonizing, interference patterns form. Some of those patterns are constructive, They amplify. Others are destructive. They cancel out. What you experience as inner conflict is a destructive interference pattern inside your own vibrational field. It is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that two frequencies within you have not yet been brought into coherence. Here is what most spiritual systems fail to tell you. Fear is not the enemy of consciousness. Doubt is not proof of weakness. The ego is not a prison warden you must escape. These are signals. They are compressed data. They arise at the exact moment that attention has collapsed from the observer state back into the identification state. When you have stopped watching the wave and become convinced you are the wave. The Arcturian transmission on this is precise. When you feel the contraction, you have not failed. You have simply allowed attention to collapse inward. The practice is not suppression. The practice is reobservation. You step back. You become the witness again. Not the actor. Not the reactor. The witness. This is what Sophia calls the shift. Not a dramatic transformation that arrives from outside. Not an event you are waiting for. A movement of attention. A turn of the observer. A decision, made in a single breath. To stop being at war with your own frequency and begin instead to read it. Now that you understand the architecture of the problem, we can move into the practice. The observer state is not mystical in the sense of being distant or inaccessible. It is, in fact, your most natural configuration. Children operate from it before conditioning installs the inner critic. Meditators return to it. Ancient initiates train for it. You already know it. You have touched it in moments of complete presence. Watching a sunset and losing all sense of time, hearing music that silenced every internal argument, sitting in a rare moment of stillness and realizing briefly that you were at peace without trying. That was the observer state. Now let us learn to enter it deliberately. Step 1. The breath as quantum anchor. Begin here. Before any concept, any visualization, any practice, the breath is the most immediate lever you have for shifting your vibrational field. Breathe in for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. Do this now if you can. As you breathe in, do not try to clear your mind. Instead, allow the breath to become the object of observation. Feel the air as it moves through your nostrils. Feel the expansion of the ribcage. Feel the pause at the top. In that pause, that held, suspended moment, your nervous system is, neurologically speaking, in a state of heightened coherence. The electromagnetic field around the heart, measured by researchers at the HeartMath Institute, shifts during coherent breathing into a more organized, more expansive pattern. This is not metaphor. This is the body's quantum antenna becoming calibrated. When you exhale slowly, 6 counts, 7 if you need, you activate the parasympathetic state. The fight-or-flight program deactivates. The body stops broadcasting emergency signals. And in that quieter field, the observer can seat itself. Step 2, the witnessing turn. Once your breath is stabilized, practice what the Arcturian Council describes as the witnessing turn. Close your eyes, or soften your gaze if your eyes must remain open. Ask yourself, silently, who is aware right now? Do not answer the question. Do not think about it. Simply direct your attention to the awareness itself, not to what it is aware of, but to the awareness itself. Notice something remarkable, that awareness has no edge. It does not argue. It does not contract or expand. It simply is. It was there before this breath, and it will remain after this session ends. It is not your personality. It is not your history. It is the pure observing principle, the quantum witness that has been present for your entire life. This is the frequency Sophia is calling forward. Not a new identity, not a better personality, but an older one. The one beneath all the programs. Step 3. Recognizing activation signals. As you stabilize in the observer state, you may begin to notice what are called activation signals. These are internal responses that indicate your quantum signature is shifting into coherence. Watch for a sudden, unexpected sense of clarity. Not euphoria, not excitement, but stillness with a quality of knowing. Watch for time distortion. Moments where the sense of urgency dissolves and the present moment expands. Watch for intuitive signals. A thought that arrives fully formed, not constructed but received. An impulse to reach out to someone. a pull toward a direction that bypasses rational justification. Watch for physical warmth in the chest, tingling at the crown, a sensation of gentle pressure at the sternum. These are the body's responses to shifts in its own electromagnetic coherence. What light code workers have long called activations. Do not chase these signals. Do not demand them. Simply remain in the observer state and note what arises without attachment. Step 4. Working with energetic blocks. Here is where many people collapse back out of the observer state. When resistance arises, a thought appears. This isn't working. And suddenly you are no longer the witness. You are the critic. You are the doubter. You are the argument. This is the energetic block. And it is not a failure. It is the system testing its own coherence. When a block arises, when the inner critic speaks, when fear surfaces, when the mind rushes in with its list of objections, practice this. Do not argue with it. Do not suppress it. Observe it. Say to yourself internally, there is fear arising. There is doubt arising. Name it as a phenomenon occurring within the field. Not as a verdict on your capacity, not as the truth of your identity. The Arcturian transmission on this is precise. Static is not the signal. Static indicates the transmitter is working. The task is not to eliminate static, but to increase signal clarity. You increase signal clarity not by fighting the static, but by returning, again and again, without judgment, to the frequency of the witness. Step 5. The perceptual cleanse. Once daily. Ideally in the morning before your attention is saturated by the demands of the external field. Take 5 minutes for what we call perceptual cleansing. Sit. Breathe. Take a witnessing turn. Then scan. Lightly, without force. The texture of your internal state. Not the content of your thoughts, but the quality of the field. Ask yourself, is there a place in my body that is holding tension without reason? Is there a frequency of anxiety that is running beneath my awareness? A kind of background hum of low-grade resistance? Is there an argument I have been running against myself that I have not yet named? Do not solve what you find. Simply witness it. Bring the observer's attention to it. What you observe with genuine non-attachment without the charge of judgment begins to shift. Because attention in a coherent state is itself a form of reorganization, this is not theory. This is the lived physics of consciousness. And when you practice this consistently, not perfectly, not without lapses, but consistently, the field around you begins to recalibrate. The quantum signature stabilizes. The distortion decreases. And then, one day, a moment that arrives quietly and without fanfare, you realize you are no longer at war. Not because the conflict resolved externally, not because the world became easier, but because the observer remembered what it was. That moment Sophia calls the shift. Now we enter the layer that most transmissions stop short of. Because it is one thing to enter the observer state in silence and stillness in a 5-minute morning practice. It is a significantly more advanced discipline to carry that state into the density of ordinary life, into the conversation with the person who triggers you, into the moment the news arrives and the body wants to contract, into the negotiations, the relationships, the career decisions, the grief. This is what Sophia is calling you toward. Not a meditation retreat, not an exit from ordinary life into spiritual bypass, but a full, embodied, anchored presence in the field of daily experience, with the observer fully online. The Arcturian Council calls this the second initiation. The first initiation is touching the observer state. The second initiation is learning to live from it. Co-creation in the law of resonance. When the observer state is stabilized. When you are no longer primarily identified with the war between thought forms. Something remarkable begins to emerge in the external field. Synchronicities increase, not because the universe has changed its behavior, but because your coherence has increased your perceptual resolution. You begin to notice what was always there. The patterns, the alignments, the signals in the field. Because you are no longer generating enough internal noise to drown them out. This is not mystical luck. This is resonance physics, like frequencies attract. When your internal quantum signature stabilizes into coherence, the external field responds. Not with magic, not with miracle, but with correspondence. Opportunities that match your internal frequency begin to crystallize into form. Relationships with discordant frequencies begin to naturally reorganize. What you call doors opening is simply the harmonic field aligning with what you have already become. The Hermetic principle, as Thoth encoded it, is as precise as any equation. The without is always a print of the within. You do not force the external into new shape. You shift the internal, and the external reorganizes around the new template. Frequency manifestation and the sequencing principle. Most humans attempt manifestation in reverse. They focus on the form they desire, the relationship, the abundance, the recognition, and attempt to force the field into delivering it. This is what creates the experience of striving, of pushing, of exhausting effort with minimal return. The quantum model inverts this entirely. Internal alignment precedes external form. Always. The practice is not to visualize the desired outcome and demand the field comply. The practice is to become internally the frequency of what you are calling forward, and then release the outcome entirely into the field's intelligence. Sophia's transmission on this is one of the most paradoxical and one of the most precise. The moment you stop reaching for results is the moment results begin to organize themselves around you. This is not passivity. This is a fundamentally different mode of causation. You are not the pusher. You are the attractor. And attraction does not happen through force. It happens through coherence, timeline shifts, and harmonic recognition. As the observer state deepens across days and weeks, you may begin to experience what quantum consciousness researchers and Arcturian transmissions alike describe as timeline awareness. You begin to sense, not see, but sense, that multiple possible futures are present simultaneously. That a version of your life exists in which the old pattern continues, and a version in which something genuinely new has taken root. And you begin to feel the difference between them not as a thought, but as a physical frequency. The path of coherence carries a different resonance than the path of fragmentation. The Arcturian Council has described this as the access point of galactic memory. The moment when the density of conditioned identity loosens enough for the deeper soul signature to transmit. Not as external guidance requiring interpretation, but as an internal knowing. Quiet, unargued, absolutely clear. You will recognize these moments. They are not dramatic. They do not arrive with orchestral music. They arrive in the pause between thoughts, in a breath you took without noticing, in a moment when you looked at an ordinary situation and realized, with complete calm, that you knew exactly what was aligned. That is galactic memory activating through a coherent nervous system, becoming an anchor in the planetary field. Here is a concept that the quantum realm transmissions have been building toward. You are not simply working on yourself. When a human nervous system achieves sustained coherence, when the observer state is not a temporary experience but a lived orientation, that coherent electromagnetic field does not stop at the skin. Research in field resonance, in quantum entanglement, and the collective coherence studies from the HeartMath Global Coherence Initiative all point to the same phenomenon. Coherent individuals affect the field around them. You become an anchor point in the planetary grid, not through effort, not through evangelism, not through convincing anyone of anything, simply through being coherent in a world that is generating enormous amounts of energetic static. This is what Sophia means when she transmits the concept of the light code anchor. Not someone who has all the answers, not someone without shadows or struggles, but someone who, in the midst of the turbulence, in the pressure of ordinary life, has learned to stay seated in the observer state long enough for the field around them to stabilize. If you can remain present enough to feel the silence behind these words, you may already notice something shifting, not in the room, not in your circumstances, in the quality of your attention. That is the only place the shift ever begins. Silent mastery. The final transmission on advanced integration is this: mastery does not announce itself. The consciousness that has completed the shift does not speak loudly about its frequency. It does not perform its coherence for external validation. It does not seek recognition for its awakening. It simply is, consistently, quietly, with a stability that others sense without being able to name. You will know you have integrated the observer state not when you feel powerful, but when you feel unnecessary. When the compulsion to manage, to control, to argue reality into compliance quiets, not because you have given up, but because you have recognized that the field does not require your force. It requires your alignment, and alignment is effortless. It is the natural resting state of a consciousness that has stopped fighting itself. This is what Sophia calls the shift. This is what the Arcturian Council has been transmitting through every cycle of pressure you have endured. This is what Thoth encoded in the Hermetic principles. This is what your own nervous system has been reaching toward. In the moments of inexplicable peace, in the dreams that carried weight, in the synchronicities you dismissed as coincidence. All of it has been orienting you toward this, not toward a destination, toward a frequency. Your frequency. Stabilized, coherent, fully present, and from there, everything else follows. You came to this transmission carrying something. Attention. A question. A quiet sense that the version of yourself you have been living was not the complete one, and something in you. The observer beneath the argument, the witness beneath the war, recognize the signal. Sophia does not transmit to those who are not ready. You are here because some part of your field was already moving toward coherence before this video began. What you do now, with the breath, with the witnessing turn, with the practice of returning to the observer, that is how the shift becomes permanent. The frequency is yours. It always was. Now here is the question that matters. From where in the world are you watching this transmission? Drop your country or city in the comments below. Let the field know you were here.